Hello, welcome to my office. My name is Paul Tilley, and I'm your instructor for Marketing 2 at College North Atlantic. Marketing 2 is a continuation of Marketing 1. It follows almost exactly, it dovetails both together. In Marketing 2, what we're going to be looking at are the 4 P's: the price, the place, the promotion, and the product itself. We start with a discussion of the product, and over the first 3 chapters that we're looking at, we're going to be looking at the development of new products, then we're going to be looking at the management of new products, and then we're going to be looking at the service sector, which is a form of product. So over the next few classes, we'll be looking at that, so stay tuned and let's get started. Chapter 10, if you follow along in your slides that are attached to you, you'll follow along with my discussion here. And I'll try to keep it short and brief, but to explain some of the slides a bit. So if you look at Chapter 10, Developing New Products, we're going to, in this chapter, learn about the product terminologies, things that you hear in marketing related to products. We'll look at that. Then we're going to look at classifying products, how products can be pigeonholed into various types and who they're designed for and what they're designed for. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at this concept of newness. What constitutes a new product? And we'll see that it's more complicated than at first blush. We're also going to look at what happens to make a product successful, or the converse of that, why do products fail? Finally, and most importantly, we're going to look at the new product process, and we're going to see that the process is a step-by-step process that all manufacturers follow, but it's also more intricate than a superficial blush would tend to point out. So without further ado, let's take a look at some new products and what exactly products would be. First of all, a product is classified for our purposes as a good, which is a tangible asset that you can actually touch and see and feel, or it could be an intangible product, such as a service, which you can't touch. You can't see a service, but you can feel the results of the service. For example, getting a haircut. There's nothing tangible that comes out of that other than the fact that you have a new haircut. The final and third aspect of a product is this concept of ideas, and ideas are very powerful products. We're used to ideas, we're being sold ideas all day. Politicians, for example, are key, their key product is the selling of ideas. A particular philosophy or a particular political point of view would be considered an idea, and yes, it would be marketed. So we need to be familiar with that concept. Next, as we move along, we'll see that we need to be able to define products in 2 basic ways. First of all, products can be grouped together. So if, for example, a manufacturer is manufacturing a product, all of the products of a similar type, for example, if we're talking about automobiles, Chevrolet would have a series of cars or trucks that wear that Chevrolet badge. So that would be considered a line of products, as Black & Decker would have a line of power tools, or Bombardier recreational products would have a line of snowmobiles. So these lines are products that have something in common. Usually they share a common trademark or a common logo, so you would see that floating through. The other aspect of it is when we take a series of lines of products and we put them together in a store such as Walmart or Canadian Tire, that constitutes a product mix, and a mix is made up of a number of product lines. So you can imagine that as you walk into a store, you see a line of televisions, a line of jeans, a line of any number of products, appliances, these sorts of things. All those together in the store make up the product mix, and you'll notice some stores have much broader product mixes than other stores, and it's an important distinction because some stores focus on very small or very narrow product mixes, such as a Future Shop or a Best Buy, all electronics, that type of thing. Whereas a Walmart would have a very broad product mix, and you could imagine that those stores would open up many, many items and be very large as a result of that, appealing to a broad range of customers. So that's that first issue there that we want to look at. We can also classify products, and usually there's a couple of key ways that products are classified. First of all, we can look at it by the type of user. If we think about a user, for example, you or I who are involved in school and this sort of thing, we might own a chainsaw, or we might own a hammer, or we might own a mixer. We don't necessarily make our living off that, and if we don't, we're kind of like a weekend warrior. So we kind of go and buy these products based on price or availability or convenience, how easy it is to pick up when we need it. Whereas just think if we're a professional. Let's be a professional carpenter for a second. Would a professional carpenter use the same hammer that we have? Would they use the same drill? Would they use the same saw? Would they want something of a higher quality? Would they want something that they look very hard for and study, do research on, and they're going to make their living on it after all, so let's assume that they're doing good work in order to assume that they're buying something of higher quality, more durable, better weight balance, these sorts of things. So when we look at customers, we can break customers down by type of user. Those who use it very little and base it on price and things like that, or those who use it a lot, so they would use it to make a living on, so they would want a product that is much different than the average user. So we can look at type of user. We could also look at the degree of tangibility of a product. Not all products are tangible. You think of this video, for example, that I'm making here now. You can't touch it. It's very, very intangible. There's no physical thing that comes out of it. However, the video camera that's being used to make it is a very tangible product. I can touch it, I can feel it. Here it is right here. So it has a high degree of tangibility. But, okay, so those things are very clear cut. They're very tangible or very intangible. But most products fall somewhere in this continuum. So let's say, for example, you're going to go to a restaurant for lunch. The food you're eating is a very tangible product. You're saying, okay, my potatoes are in front of me, I'm eating them. That's tangible. Well, what about all the services it took in order to make those potatoes to bring them to the front of you? So someone had to get the potato, peel it, cook it, present it in front of you on a nice plate. Those are the intangible aspects. So you can imagine that a lot of services contain not only intangibles, which we normally think about when we think about services, but also a lot of tangible items. And you can imagine it as a continuum where we have very tangible products on one side, intangible products on the other side, and most services have some degree of tangibility and intangibility to them. So it fits somewhere along that continuum. So we can classify based on how tangible a product is or how intangible a product is. That's an important distinction. We also look at products from the point of view of consumer goods. We could look at them and say, okay, how can we subclassify consumer goods? And generally we can do that very easily. First of all, we look at consumer goods and we think, we could think of things that you buy in a convenience store. Convenience goods, we call those. Those are very easily found in many places. Chocolate bars, milk, pop. These are all widely available. You can buy them basically anywhere. You don't give a lot of thought to their purchase. You don't want to look too hard for them. You generally know what you want. It's a convenience good. But other products, we might want to shop around for them. These are called shopping goods. So, for example, you want to buy a new shirt. Well, are you going to buy it first place you find it? You're going to look around. You're going to go to one store, another store, another store. You're going to compare prices, compare quality, compare feel, touch, look, these sorts of things. Those are considered as shopping goods. And many of higher priced, higher risk goods are what we call shopping goods, where you have to look for them. We also have a strange kind of category that is even more intense in shopping goods, and that's specialty goods. Specialty goods tend to be one-offs or rather unique items that are only available in certain places. Wedding rings, for example. If you go buy a wedding ring, odds are most people like something that's unique. Well, if you want something unique, you're going to have to shop really hard for it. You're going to have to put a lot of work into it, those are what are called specialty goods. And we have specialty goods stores, little boutiques that you'll find in major downtowns. These tend to sell specialty goods that people really look hard for and put a lot of time, effort, and money into buying. The last category that we see in terms of consumer goods, there's things called on-site goods. And these are things that you buy that you didn't realize you were going to buy. It's similar, I suppose, to convenience goods in the sense that you don't have to think too hard to buy them. But generally with an on-site good is you buy it because it falls in front of you. You think of, you go to a cash register in any store and you have a child with you, and the child looks at all the items that are on the side of the cash register, chocolate bars, gum, these sorts of things. That's put there for a reason. The reason it's there is because people are standing up. They're a captive audience as they're waiting to get cashed out. So as a result, they might buy that just by looking at it and saying, hey, I should buy that. I never thought of it. That's what's known as an on-site good. So we got these basic types of consumer goods. We also got industrial goods, and we could think about dividing industrial goods along certain categories. If we think about industrial goods in a broad sense, industrial goods are any goods that are used in industry to do something, to make something, to become something else, such as iron ore would be an industrial good, or steel would be an industrial good. It's used in the production process. So the first major thing that we think of when we think of industrial goods is exactly that, stuff that's used in the production process. And these are called production goods. They're used in the process, such as iron ore, steel, these sorts of things. But there are other aspects too of items that are used to make that production happen. They're not actually built into the product, but they're essential for the product to get built. So we could think of things like what we define as installation. Installations we would think of as buildings or infrastructure that's put up to do that. The Hibernia platform is an example of an installation. It is a large asset that's located on the Grand Banks that's used to pump oil. And oil could not be pumped without it. It's a very expensive item. It's a very visible item, usually very tangible, very, mega project type B normally in terms of the building, the infrastructure, the stuff that we can see. But within that, then we have other items. For example, we have accessory equipment. These we would consider as tools or machinery that's used within the building or within the plant operation in order to do that. So accessory equipment could be things like, anything from a cement mixer to a knife to a broom to these sorts of things that help get the job done. We also have suppliers that come into place, or supplies that the suppliers provide. Paper, pencils, pens, these sorts of things would come into the supplies category. And finally, we would look at the services, and these would include any of the services that a large firm would want, such as legal services, accounting services, and so on. So we could think about classifying industrial goods along those lines. Next, we look at this concept of the new product, and we have to ask what exactly constitutes newness. And so newness is an arbitrary term. Normally we think of new as shiny, something original, something we haven't seen before. But there are many ways to look at new. We could look at new relative to other products. If it's brand new and we look at all the other products around and say, yeah, those products are old relative to it, that could be new. But it could be new in legal terms as well. We could think, well, is it new in legal terms? And when we think legally, we think, well, patents, first of all. Patents are a protection that government offers for innovation, so that gives a 20-year right to make or right to the process. That's one form of legal. But also in terms of marketing and consumer marketing, any product that has new stamped on it, the law says that it can only be new for a year. So new improved Palmolive dish detergent would be new for a year. So we could think of it new then. We could also think new from the company's perspective. If an organization is brand new to producing, well, let's say a car company, starts making new pickup trucks. They've never made pickup trucks before. Well, that's new. That's new to them. Pickup trucks have been around a long time. They're not new. But the production of pickup trucks by this particular company could be considered as new, so we could look at that. And we could also think about new from the consumer's perspective. If you live somewhere rather isolated, something may come to town that you've never seen before. Now, everyone out in the larger world may have seen it for years. Bagels, for example. Years ago, bagels were very rare in Newfoundland and Labrador. Everywhere else, though, in larger centers, bagels have been around for many years. But to be integrated into society in common stores, relatively new for us. So new from a consumer's perspective is important. So that's the new product scenario. We also talk about this concept of new and in terms of innovation, and the basic gist of that is, why are stores, why are organizations involved in creating new products, and what do they do when they create new products? How do they do that? And generally, manufacturers have two different approaches to bringing new products to market. First of all, in order to reduce the risk of bringing a new product to market, some manufacturers may say, let's just make it a little bit different than it was before. Let's add to it a slightly improved version, let's say, for example. That's what's called dynamically continuous innovation, where we have an evolution of a product. And we take it and we move it along, we add a piece to it. And consumers can generally deal with that pretty easily because it's just one more new thing to learn on an existing product that they're all familiar with. So we could think of toothbrushes, for example, where you add a twist to the toothbrush, and you make it kind of bend. Well, it's still a toothbrush. Everybody recognizes it as a toothbrush, but with that bend in it, it improves the way it brushes your teeth. Certainly, there's benefit there, but we ask ourselves, do the consumers perceive the benefit? They probably would. But do the consumer need to learn any new techniques in order to use that toothbrush? They probably don't. So it makes it very easily adaptable within the consumer world. Now, on the other hand, if we invented a new type of toothbrushing system, let's assume that it used high pressure water, and instead of brushing using the conventional method, we have to get this machine ready, and it has a pump on it that we have to put in a certain way, and these sorts of things. That's what's called discontinuous innovation from a manufacturer's point of view. It brings a revolution in the way things are done, a total change in philosophy on how to use and how to perform a certain act or to provide a certain service. That is good in the sense that it leaps forward, it creates technological leaps and allows us to move ahead. But from a consumer's point of view, there's a certain risk in that, because consumers will say, I have to learn a brand new technique to use this, and I'm a little bit reluctant to do that. So a lot of manufacturers, even though they like the idea of a revolutionary design, the marketers would probably hold back on that, saying we have to get the consumers comfortable with that new design, and if consumers don't become comfortable with that new design, the product could possibly fail, which is always a challenge. Speaking of failures, we think about, why is it that products either succeed or fail in the marketplace? And well, much research has been done, and if we look at some of that research, generally it points to why things fail. And generally the number one reason that things fail is that people don't perceive any difference in it. If you have an old product and a new product, and people look at it and say, hey, there's no difference in it. But what if there's a significant price difference, let's say, between the new product and the old product? Will people jump to the new product? Very unlikely. Blu-ray players are an example of that. You know, if you think about a normal DVD player, and it plays on your television, and a DVD player that has the Blu-ray capacity, people had to buy a brand new machine to do that. And they had to ask themselves, does the quality of the Blu-ray player justify the expense of buying a Blu-ray player and all the CDs that go with it? It has to be sufficient in terms of the difference between the original one and the new one. It's questionable whether consumers have seen that difference. And Blu-ray has not really caught on to any great degree. It's probably going to be superseded by downloadable HD files and these sorts of things before it actually becomes a popular product. We also think about no difference between the new product. We also think about not enough potential buyers. Are there enough potential buyers? Electric cars have this problem, or hybrid cars. Although it is sexy right now for a manufacturer to provide a hybrid car and tout the benefits of it and the environmental benefits and this sort of thing, these cars are very expensive. So the number of people who are willing to buy it when they look at it, are not great. So if you look at the sales statistics for conventional cars versus electric cars, you will see that electric cars still have an infinitesimally small amount of the market. It's questionable in the long run whether electric cars will survive, especially seeing that the internal combustion engine, which is normally in most cars, has been tweaked even more and more and more by manufacturers to get better gas mileage. And as long as those mileage figures can increase, a lot of people are going to say, I'm not going to buy an electric car. And manufacturers are pumping billions of dollars into electric cars, but the fact of the matter is they're not making a lot of money on them as of right now. We also think about quality that comes into play. Why does a product fail? Bad quality. The moment you get bad quality, the product fails. As soon as the word is out that this product isn't worth anything, people won't buy it. Not enough places to buy it. You might have a wonderful product, but if nobody can buy it, find it in the stores, it creates some challenges. We also got poor product timing. You imagine inventing the world's greatest snowblower and bringing it to market in June. Do you think people are going to buy it in June? Doubtful. So timing is critical. Finally, we look at an overall view of the 4 Ps. Was the price right? Was the product right? Was the place right? And was the promotion right? If any of those factors fall apart, we can understand why a product would fail. So in order for a product to succeed then, the price, the place, the product, and the promotion has to be right, which puts a tremendous onus on marketers. It also has to have a significant point of difference, a value proposition really. People have to say, I'm willing to buy that because it has that extra value. So we need those factors that come in. The final and most important part of this chapter relates to the issue of the new product process. And we have to have a good understanding of how products are brought to the market. The new product process, as the name implies, is a series of steps that all new products go through before they're actually introduced to the customer. So it's not just a matter of a store or a manufacturer producing something and shipping it. It doesn't work that way. There's quite a lot of process that goes through. So let's take a look at the process. First of all, it's not so much part of the process, but a part of a philosophy, and that is that a company has to have an innovation strategy. That is, a plan for building and designing and manufacturers and bringing new products to market. Companies that don't have that, this section don't really apply to, because they just make the same things. So truly innovative companies are the ones that will succeed in the long run. They produce new products and bring them to market on a regular basis. Companies like 3M, for example, they have it built into their mandate that every 5 years, a certain portion of their product offering will be new relative to 5 years ago. So they have dictated it. And many companies, many manufacturing and innovative type companies actually do that. So we need to be able to ensure that we have a new product philosophy before we actually move into the new product process. The first stage of that new product process, though, relates to the issue of saying, okay, where are all these wonderful ideas coming from? It's the idea stage. How can a new product come about? Where do these things come from? And generally, if we look at where ideas come from, where ideas start from a number of places. That would include customers who give feedback to companies, especially with social media and the internet now. Customers can easily flow back information to companies to say, I think you should improve this, or I think you should offer it in this color, or I think you should, and so on. So companies are always innovating and taking these old products with new ideas, incorporating these new ideas, and building them into the product. So that the new idea process comes largely from customers. But it also comes from internally. On an assembly line, for example, the people who are most familiar with the thing being assembled are the assembly line workers. They are a great source of information for things to improve on the product. Say, for example, a process is involved in putting a bumper on a car, and let's just say that process takes 17 steps. If you're on the floor putting those things on, you're seeing it all the time, and you're thinking, you know, we could do this, this, and this to speed up that process, or we could improve this design so that it would fit better or work better. So a lot of ideas come too from people internally within the organization. Third aspect of this is a company often has a R&D, a research and development branch, which is specifically designed for developing and fostering new ideas. So research and development initiatives often come from R&D branches of companies. So that's the ideas. That's generally where the ideas come in. We also think about, well, okay, internally, these are all internal sources. Where externally can these ideas come from? Well, competitors. Competitors come up with some wonderful ideas. Can we mimic or duplicate what they've done? Take, for example, the iPad. The iPad started the revolution towards tablet computers. Look how many other manufacturers produce them as well now. So, usually by assessing what competitors are doing, we can come up with some new product ideas. Okay, so we got our idea in place. Then we need to go into a screening process. Obviously, as a manufacturer, we can't do everything. There might be hundreds of ideas that come for products, but can we produce them all? No. We need to look at each one individually and assess it and say, is this the type of product we want to build? Is this the type of thing that we want to specialize in? Are we going in this direction, or are we kind of avoiding this direction? So we could look internally and say, this is something that internally we'd like to do, or we could get a third party, like a consultant, to look at it and say, is this feasible for us to follow up on? So this initial screening helps pull out about 90% of all product ideas. Once we get down to those 10% that's left, then we say, well, where is it we could look a little bit more to assess whether or not this product is viable or not? And this is where we do a business analysis. We say, which is a fancy word for a feasibility study, is it feasible to produce this product? We might have a wonderful idea. It might be a great idea, but the cost of bringing it to market could be so great and the demand for it could be so small that it's just not feasible to move forward. So a business analysis looks at the dollars and cents of the product and estimates total demand for the product. It estimates the cost of bringing the product to market, and it determines whether or not that it will be profitable at some point in the future, and at what point can we sell enough to make it profitable. If it makes it past the business development stage, then we actually have to go into a development phase. And the development phase means that we build prototypes or initial designs are looked at. So this is where we put more and more money into the product in order to get that product made. So you could think prototype development could cost millions of dollars to develop a prototype car or a computer or things like that. We use that as kind of a testing board, a sounding board. So we go out to potential customers and we'd say, what do you think of this? What do you what could we improve? So we get some feedback from this, and in the business development stage, we kind of actually think about how can we make it better? What can we do in order to actual making process? The development process is an eye-opener now. If we think about the fifth step, then is taking it to a market and saying, is this going to sell? Normally we go to something called test markets, and test markets exist in towns all across Canada and the United States, where brand new products are brought just to be tested, to sense people's willingness to buy them before we do a full launch. If it succeeds in the test markets, then odds are it will get brought to what we call commercialization, which brings a product to full market. If we think about that whole process from the idea stage to commercialization, there are many iterations between, and in each iteration there are fewer and fewer products that survive through to commercialization. But with commercialization comes a lot of costs in terms of marketing and design and all these sorts of things. Companies can't afford to commercialize everything. It needs to specialize on what it expects to do well. And there's a number of costs too that need to be considered once it's commercialized. For example, stores just don't knock stuff off the shelves to put your product on. They want some compensation for that in order to prove the product first. And that costs money as well. So that's generally what we're looking at in this unit, and thanks for watching.